With the discontinuation of the old reporting tool, you may well be wondering how to best get the information you need from ProWorkflow with the new system. Reporting doesn't need to be complicated and time-consuming. Our aim with this new tool is to make the process as painless as possible. So when it comes to creating the new reports, we have some tips and tricks to help you on your way. That said, let's take a look at the new ProWorkflow reports. There are a few things to consider with our new reports. The first is that if you had a go-to report in the old system, it could well be called something else now. One classic favourite is the time summary report. This is now called the time spent by date range. It has the original grouping options of staff and project, as well as new client and category grouping options. It sums up the time spent each day, just like the old report. However, you can also sum it up by week and month in the new system. If this was an old favourite, save a copy. You can even rename it to the original if you prefer. This brings us to the subject of report names. The idea is to save a copy of any report that you find useful. Then you can call your individualised report the name that surmises best how it's used for your business, and it'll be easier to find next time. The reports in the standard reports list keep the original standardized name and remain unchanged, so you can always refer back to them or start again if you make a mistake. Here's a few tips with regards to the standardized names. If you see the words overview or by date range, then the report is going to be a numbers and figures report. If the name contains summary of or detailed, then the report is likely to be information based, containing rows with lots of fields like dates, names, titles, and statuses. The second thing is to think of standard reports as starting points. They are highly customizable, which means you can change which field gets displayed or which filters apply. Let's say I want to find which clients haven't paid for their projects yet. My best starting point is just a normal summary of projects report, and I'll group the results by client. Firstly, I need to click into the report. Now, I always like to declutter first. This helps me focus on only the information that's important. Let's head to the Fields tab and remove everything that doesn't matter in this report, like time spent and start date fields. You'll notice that whenever a change is made, you can see the click to refresh button appear over the report. This button will update the display with all of the changes. However, you don't need to click it straight away. You can keep making changes on the side if you wish, and refresh the report only once you've finished. I'll continue to remove some of the other fields. For example, even the category field isn't really that important in this case. Let's update the report to see our changes. Now we've removed a few unnecessary things, it's a good time to think about what we need to add to make this report useful. We'll add a few fields, most importantly the paid status, but also others like completed date, invoice date, and invoice total. Let's move some of these fields around and make the paid status the item that appears on the far right, so it draws a bit more attention. I'll remove the invoice fields next to it too. Now I'll rename a field, calling the invoice total the project value. Now we can change filters. Paid needs to be no. By default, status is currently active. We should remove that too. In our company, it's the manager's job to chase the clients, so it's probably more useful to group the results for each manager. So I'll change the grouping from client to manager. Okay, that looks pretty good. Let's save this report with the name Unpaid Projects. Finally, I'll share the report so that others don't need to do this setup work too. I could share it with everybody, but this would mean that everyone with reports permissions could see this report in their list. However, in this instance, I just need to see managers, so I'm going to share this report with other managers. Now that I've saved this report, you can see it's right back up the top of the reports page. A single click sends me straight back to it. There's no need to redo those changes again. Now, the third thing about our new reporting system is that the best way to learn is to explore. A name, standardized or not, is only so good at describing what data the report contains, so the best way to check is just to run the report and see what it shows. For most reports, a single click takes you in so you can see the groupings and the potential for an overview or a more detailed version of the same data. It's worth spending some time clicking on each of the main report types to see what kind of data is being returned. Click into the Fields and Filters tabs for each report too. As we've just learnt, there is a lot of power here to really customize and focus the report for each business case. Just like before, if it looks like it might be helpful, save a copy and name it something useful for you and add a description if needed. You can always delete it later. The overview reports that sort by date range are especially worth looking at as they provide clear-cut summations of data that otherwise might have been a bit harder to obtain. These reports show grids that compare two different fields, for example staff against projects, if we go with time spent by staff and group by projects. The left-hand column changes depending on the grouping and the top row changes depending on which overview report you're actually looking at. We've written a few previous blogs on how to review and use these new reports, and it may be useful to go back over them. We'll link them at the bottom of the blog post attached to this video. Finally, if you get stuck, please don't hesitate to give the support team a call or send a message. We're always happy to help.